Let's take a look at how to add styles through our hook. It's pretty straightforward. There are only 2 steps required to add styles to our pages. The first step is to register our style. Registering styles simply means that you're telling WordPress that you have a style sheet and you would like WordPress to know its location along with other details. In the resources section of this lecture, I provide a link to learn all about registering styles. In order to register a style, use the wp_register_style function. Under the usage section, you'll see we're using this function correctly because it says use the wp_unqueue_scripts action to call this function. Calling it outside of an action can lead to problems. Since we're already doing that, it's safe to assume we can use this function. This function has 2 required parameters. The first parameter is the handle name. The handle name can be thought of as a unique name or ID for reference. The second parameter is the source to the style sheet. Let's go back to the onQueue function and use this function. Alright, so let's call the wp_register_style function and let's pass in a handle for the first parameter. If we go back to the index template, you'll see we have 4 style sheets being loaded. The first style sheet is Bootstrap. So let's just call this handle ju_bootstrap. Just like functions, it's also common practice to prefix our handles with some initials. For the second parameter, let's pass in the source. There's actually a function that will always point to the current themes directory. This makes it easier on us as we don't have to perform checks if the owner of the site changed the names of the themes directory. This function is called get_template_directory_URI. You do not have to pass in anything and you don't have to include any files to get this function to work. This function is loaded and created for you by WordPress. You may notice this function is similarly named to the getTemplateDirectory function. The difference between these 2 functions is the URI version will actually get the web URL. The non-URI version gets the system path. The other parameters aren't really needed for our theme, so we won't be going over them. However, feel free to take a look at them and mess around with it. That's it. If we refresh our page, you'll notice that this won't work just yet. We've only registered our style. Now we must tell WordPress we would like to add it to our page. We now have to use a function called wp_unqueue_style. I've also included a link to this function in the resources section of this lecture. This function only has 1 required parameter, which is the handle name of the style we registered earlier. You'll notice the other parameters are similar to the wp_register_style function. However, these are only available just in case you forget to register a style. You should always register a style though. The difference between registering and unqueuing a file is that register will tell WordPress about a style sheet and make it available to be called later on, while unqueuing will instruct WordPress to load our style sheets onto the page. You will not always want to unqueue a style on every page as it isn't always efficient. There's also plugins out there that will sometimes scan registered styles and perform actions such as minifying or combining style sheets together. So it's best to register first, then unqueue. Let's unqueue the Bootstrap style sheet. Right after registering, let's call the function wp_unqueueStyle and pass in the handle name ju_bootstrap. Alright, we're almost done, I promise. There's only one last thing we need to do in order for all of this to work. If we go back to the index template, you'll notice we haven't told WordPress where to load our style sheets. Our template is pure HTML. Let's change that. Go to the head section of our template and right after the title tag, call the function wp_head. The wp_head function is a function defined by WordPress. This function simply tells WordPress this is the spot where themes and plugins can unqueue their style sheets and script files. Let's refresh our page and we should see some of it working. If you see something similar to what I see, then you're good to go. Let's wrap up this lecture by adding the rest of our styles. Here's what I want you to do. Pause the video and add the rest of your style sheets. Alright, so now that you're back, you should have something similar to what I have on my screen. You'll also notice that we were using 2 Google font sets called Roboto and Roboto Mono. Since these are hosted outside of our site, I didn't use the getTemplateDirector_URI function. I just pasted in the direct URL that Google provides. Lastly, I edited the index template and removed any reference to these sheets since we're doing this the WordPress way. Let's go to our home page and open up the console. You'll notice we get a lot of errors, but we'll fix these soon. What I want you to look for is any 404 errors related to style sheets. If you don't see any, then that means you loaded everything correctly. Awesome! Our site is starting to look pretty cool. Let's talk about adding scripts in the next lecture.